I found my husband in our guest bedroom with my younger sister on our 10th wedding anniversary. The champagne I'd brought home to celebrate sat warming in my hands as I watched them scramble for clothes. That image burned itself into my brain like a brand on cattle. Hello there, my loves. My name is Rose Martinez, though most folks around here call me Grandma Rose. I'm 71 years old. Born in San Antonio, Texas in 1953, but I've called Portland, Oregon my home for the past 35 years. The story of how I ended up in the Pacific Northwest is one I've carried in silence for decades, wrapped up tight like barbed wire around my heart. Before we begin, I want to mention that the Golden Years Chronicles channel is celebrating 15,000 subscribers with a $250 giveaway. I still can't believe so many people want to hear an old woman's tales. To enter, simply subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, like this video, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from or share a piece of your own story. I'd love to know you, my virtual grandchildren. Now let me take you back to the beginning. I was born in 1953 in a modest neighborhood in San Antonio. My father, Roberto, was a mechanic who could fix anything with wheels. He'd come home with grease under his fingernails that never quite washed away, but his hands were the gentlest things when he'd brush my hair before bed. My mother, Carmen, worked as a seamstress from our living room, her old Singer machine humming like a prayer from dawn until the streetlights came on. We weren't rich by any measure. Our house was a small two-bedroom on Guadalupe Street. I shared a room with my three younger sisters, Maria, Sophia, and little Teresa. We slept two to a bed, but I never felt crowded. Our house smelled like my mother's arroz con pollo and fresh tortillas. The sound of my childhood was that sewing machine mixed with Selena on the radio, and my father's booming laugh when he told stories about the cars he'd fixed that day. My mother used to tell me while she sewed, "Mija, when you choose a husband, make sure he treats you like your father treats me, with respect and partnership." And it was true. My father never raised his voice to my mother. Even when money was tight and stress ran high, he'd kiss her forehead and they'd face problems together, side by side. I believed all marriages were like that. The innocence of a girl raised with love. School came easy to me. I walked 40 minutes each way, but I didn't mind because books opened worlds I'd never seen. I dreamed of becoming a nurse, of healing people, of wearing that crisp white uniform with pride. My father encouraged me, even though most girls in our neighborhood got married right after high school. Education is power, Mija. Nobody can take that from you. I graduated nursing school in 1972 at 19. First in my family to get a degree. My father couldn't stop crying at graduation, trying to hide it behind his rough mechanic's hands. That silent pride meant everything. I started working at Methodist Hospital downtown. Long shifts, difficult cases, but I loved it. The satisfaction of helping someone through their worst day, of being the calm voice in chaos. I felt purposeful, needed, alive. That's when I met David. He came into the ER one night with his nephew who'd broken an arm playing baseball. Tall, sandy-haired, with green eyes that seemed to see right through me. He wore a crisp button-down despite the late hour, clean cut and put together. "Are you the nurse who's going to fix my nephew?" he asked, and his smile made my heart skip. "I'll do my best," I managed, feeling heat rise to my cheeks. His nephew joined my regular rotation of pediatric cases. Coincidentally or not, David always came to visit during my shifts. Always dressed well, always with a compliment ready. "Nurse Rose, you have the kindest eyes I've ever seen. That uniform looks like it was made for an angel. Intelligence and beauty. What a combination." I was a 20-year-old girl from a traditional Mexican family with zero dating experience. I fell for every word like autumn leaves. One evening after his nephew was discharged, he waited for me after my shift. "Would you let me buy you coffee? Just to say thank you for taking such good care of Tommy." I hesitated. I'd never gone anywhere alone with a man. But something about David felt safe, respectful. I told my mother, who frowned with concern. Mija, men who are too charming usually know they're charming. But Mama, he's so respectful. He hasn't even tried to hold my hand. Not yet, she said with the wisdom of experience. Not yet, but who listens to mother's warnings when your heart races like a drumbeat? That first coffee date stretched into 3 hours. David was an investment banker, educated, ambitious. He talked about wanting to build a life, a family, a future. The way he looked at me when he said future made it clear who he saw in that picture. Our courtship was slow, proper, everything within the boundaries my traditional upbringing demanded. David came to Sunday dinners, charmed my father with talk about cars and the Spurs. He helped my mother clear dishes, something no man in our neighborhood did. This young man seems solid, my father said after a few months. But take your time, Mija. Just because he shows his good side doesn't mean there isn't another side waiting. Oh, how I wish I'd listened. For the first year, David was everything romance novels promised. He brought me flowers from the market, wrote me love notes, respected me completely. Our kisses were sweet. His hands never crossed lines. I want to do everything right with you, Rose, he'd say. You deserve a man who values you, and I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I'd grown up watching my father treat my mother with devotion. After 18 months of dating, the proposal came. Nothing fancy, just David on one knee in my parents' living room during Sunday dinner. My sisters squealed. My mother cried. My father gripped David's shoulder firmly. I'm trusting you with my daughter, my treasure. Take care of her the way I have. You have my word, sir. I'll make her the happiest woman alive. The wedding was set for 6 months later. Those months flew by in a blur of dress fittings, venue bookings, invitation addressing. David had bought us a house in Alamo Heights, a nice neighborhood where doctors and lawyers lived. Far nicer than anywhere I'd imagined living. You'll never want for anything, David promised, showing me the house with its 3 bedrooms. Modern kitchen, backyard with a pool. I should have noticed the possessiveness in how he said, my wife will have the best of everything. But I only heard the promise of comfort. The wedding was in January. 1974, I was 21, David 29. The ceremony at Our Lady of Guadalupe Church where I'd been baptized, where my parents married, where my whole life had been centered. I wore a dress my mother spent months sewing by hand, every stitch made with love. Walking down the aisle on my father's arm, I saw David waiting. That brilliant smile, those green eyes shining, the expensive suit that fit him perfectly. This is my forever, I thought. With him, I'll be happy always. The honeymoon was in Cancun, Mexico. David had saved for months to give me this gift. A week in paradise, our first time truly alone, truly intimate. David was gentle at first, patient with my inexperience and nervousness. But by the 3rd day, something shifted. He became demanding, rougher, less concerned with my comfort. A wife should satisfy her husband however he wants, he said one night when I expressed discomfort. I swallowed my tears and complied. He was my husband. Wasn't that what wives did? We returned to San Antonio and began married life. I continued working at the hospital, David at his bank. Our combined salaries meant we lived comfortably, better than my parents ever had. But slowly, incrementally, David began to change. Small criticisms about my cooking. Questions about who I talked to at work. Comments about how I dressed. That skirt's too short for a married woman. Why do you need makeup to work the night shift? Who are you trying to impress? This Dr. Chen you mention, is he single? Dr. Chen was 65 and married for 40 years. But to David, any man who spoke to me was a threat. Around this time, I became pregnant. Joy exploded in my chest. I'd always dreamed of being a mother, of giving my children the love my parents gave me. When I told David, he smiled, hugged me, promised to be the best father in the world. For a few weeks, he returned to being the man I fell in love with. Attentive, Romantic, gentle. Until I miscarried at 12 weeks. Heavy bleeding while at work. Emergency surgery. Devastating loss. When I came home, David was different. Cold, distant, as if I'd personally failed him. "You should have been more careful," he said one evening. "Working those long shifts, always on your feet. You lost my son through negligence," his son. As if I hadn't lost my child too. That was the first time I cried alone in the bathroom with the shower running so he wouldn't hear. But it wouldn't be the last. After the miscarriage, David's mask fell away completely. The prince became a tyrant. The fairy tale turned into a nightmare. My loves, I can see this story is getting long, but I need to share it all with you. Before we continue, would you help this old grandmother by clicking that like button and subscribing to the channel? Each subscription warms my heart. And please comment where you're watching from. Now, back to my story. The first year of marriage ended with a reality nothing like what I'd dreamed. David was no longer attentive or affectionate. He was controlling, jealous, constantly angry. He criticized everything. My cooking was too spicy or too bland. My clothes were too revealing or too frumpy. My voice was too loud. Even my breathing irritated him. "You chew too loudly. How do you expect me to relax at dinner with that noise?" Gradually, I became smaller. Talked less. Smiled less. Tried to be perfect so he'd have no reason to complain. I was walking on eggshells in my own home. In the second year of marriage, I got pregnant again. This time, I took every precaution. I reduced my hospital hours, rested constantly, followed every medical recommendation to the letter. David seemed more excited about this pregnancy. "Now it will work," he'd say. "I'll finally have my child." But at 6 months, I lost this baby too. Different complication, same devastating result. Worse because I'd felt the baby move, had bought tiny clothes, had named him in my heart. This time, David didn't wait until we got home to show his anger. In the hospital parking lot, he started. "There's something wrong with you. Normal women carry babies to term." My mother had 5 children with no problems. The doctor said sometimes it just happens, David. It's nobody's fault. It's your fault. Your body is defective. When we got home, the verbal assault continued. For the first time in our marriage, I fought back. "And you think your criticism helps? Your constant pressure? You're treating me like a failure?" That's when he hit me, a slap across my face so hard I tasted blood. The shock was worse than the pain. "Never speak to me like that again," he hissed. "I'm your husband. You owe me respect." That night while he slept, I thought about leaving, going back to my parents, but shame held me hostage. What would they think? That I couldn't keep my marriage together? That I'd failed at being a wife? In our community, a divorced woman was damaged goods. A failure, and I'd been raised to make marriage work no matter what. So I stayed. First mistake of many. The third year was when everything completely fell apart. David got fired from the bank. Something about missing funds, irregular transactions. He swore innocence, but his eyes had that gleam I'd learned to recognize when he lied. He was unemployed for 8 months. My nurse's salary barely covered our mortgage and bills. The nice house in Alamo Heights became a prison I could barely afford to maintain. David's drinking, which had been social, became daily. Beer at lunch became whiskey straight from the bottle by breakfast. Drunk, he was worse. Criticism became insults. Slaps became punches. I started wearing long sleeves to cover bruises. Makeup to hide black eyes. I became an expert at excuses. I walked into a cabinet. I fell down the stairs. I'm just clumsy. My coworkers pretended to believe me because intervening was uncomfortable. My parents began to suspect. My mother asked directly, but I lied. "Everything's fine, Mama, just a difficult phase. It'll pass." But it didn't pass. It only got worse. That's when my younger sister Teresa started coming around more. She'd moved to San Antonio after college, working as a paralegal. Beautiful, vivacious, always perfectly put together. At first, she seemed like an angel. She'd visit when David was at job interviews, bring food, talked to me when I was crying, offered to help clean the house. Rose, he hits you. That's not normal. You need to leave. I can't, Teresa. I have nowhere to go. Yes, you do. You can stay with me until you figure things out. David hated Teresa's visits. He said she was a bad influence, that she'd fill my head with feminist nonsense about leaving him. What I didn't know was that while I worked night shifts at the hospital, David and Teresa were growing close in a different way, small signs I ignored. A perfume smell on his collar that wasn't mine. Teresa suddenly unavailable when I called. David taking longer walks around the neighborhood. One evening I came home early from the hospital. A patient crisis was resolved faster than expected. I opened our front door and heard laughter. Familiar laughter coming from upstairs. My heart stopped. I climbed those stairs on legs made of lead. Each step took a year. I already knew what I'd find, but knowing didn't prepare me. I opened our bedroom door and there they were. My husband and my baby sister. In the bed where I slept every night. In the house I worked overtime to help pay for. They didn't even notice me at first. Too caught up in each other, I didn't scream. Didn't cry. Just stood there frozen, watching my life implode. Finally, David looked up, saw me standing there, and he laughed. Actually laughed. Well, this is awkward, he said, not even trying to cover himself. Teresa at least had the decency to look ashamed. She grabbed clothes and ran past me, couldn't even look me in the eye. How long? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Does it matter? David was pulling on his pants, completely casual about destroying our marriage. How long? 6 months. Maybe 7. She's better than you in every way, Rose. More fun. More adventurous. Actually interested in satisfying a man. Each word was a knife. But something strange happened. Instead of crying, I felt clarity wash over me like cold water. I'm leaving, I said simply. That's when his expression changed. The amusement vanished, replaced by rage. You're not going anywhere. This is my house. You're my wife. You leave when I say you can leave. He blocked the doorway with his body, 6 feet tall and 200 pounds of muscle and fury. Get out of my way, David. Make me. I tried to push past him. That's when the beating began, the worst one yet. Fists, kicks, his hands around my throat at one point. I thought I was going to die. Part of me wanted to. I don't know how long it lasted. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. When he finally stopped, I was lying on our bedroom floor, vision blurred, ribs screaming, blood running from my nose and mouth. Try to leave again and I'll kill you, he said, standing over me, breathing hard. Understand? I couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. He grabbed his wallet and keys. I'm going out. When I get back, I want you cleaned up and dinner ready. He left. Just left me there, bleeding and broken. I lay there for what felt like forever. Every breath was agony. But something in me, some survival instinct, said I had to get out before he came back. I crawled to the phone. My first instinct was to call my parents, but I knew my father would come kill David and end up in prison himself. I called my oldest sister, Maria. She lived across town with her husband and 3 kids. Maria, I whispered into the phone. I need help. David, he beat me badly. Jesus Christ, Rose, stay right there. We're coming. Maria and her husband Juan arrived 20 minutes later. When they saw me, Juan actually vomited. We need to get you to the hospital, he said, picking me up carefully. No hospital. David will find me there. He knows people at all the hospitals. To our house, then. Maria, get some of her things. Maria went to pack a bag and came back pale. Juan, there's blood on the sheets. A lot of blood. I realized then that wasn't all from me. Had David hurt Teresa too? Or was it something else? They took me to their small house in a working-class neighborhood. 3 kids who stared at me with wide, frightened eyes. Aunt Rose fell. Maria quickly explained, sending them outside to play. She cleaned my wounds, iced my bruises, gave me painkillers. While she worked, she asked gently, How long has this been happening? And I told her everything. The abuse that started after the first miscarriage. The daily humiliation. The affair with our sister. Our sister? Maria's hands froze. Teresa? I nodded, fresh tears finally coming. That little bitch, Maria hissed. After everything you've done for her. Juan, listening from the doorway, shook his head. He won't stop, Rose. Men like that only get worse. That night I slept at Maria's house, medicated and exhausted. When I woke up, every inch of my body hurt. My face was so swollen I barely recognized myself in the bathroom mirror. Maria convinced me to file a police report. We went to the station, me limping and wearing dark sunglasses to hide the worst bruises. The officer who took my statement seemed bored, like he'd heard this story 1,000 times before. You want to press charges against your husband? I do. You know that means he could be arrested, right? You want to destroy your marriage over a fight? Destroy my marriage? My marriage was already destroyed. But I swallowed my outrage. I'm certain. I did the medical examination. The list of injuries was long. Multiple facial contusions, fractured cheekbone, cracked ribs, bruised kidneys, strangulation marks on neck. The doctor who examined me whispered, "If you go back, he'll kill you." I've seen it too many times. I didn't go back. I stayed with Maria while the police looked for David. 3 days later, news came. David had disappeared, cleaned out our joint bank account, taken his things, abandoned the house, and vanished like smoke. But there was more. Teresa had also disappeared. My baby sister, the one I'd helped raise when our mother was sick. The one I'd paid for braces, the one I'd encouraged to go to college, gone. On the 4th day, I got an unexpected visit. A man I didn't recognize came to Maria's house. "Mrs. Martinez? I'm Detective Ramirez. We need to ask you some questions about your sister Teresa." My blood turned cold. "What about her? When's the last time you saw her?" "The day I found her with my husband. Why?" The detective exchanged glances with his partner. "Mrs. Martinez, your sister's car was found abandoned at the airport. Her purse was still inside with her wallet and ID. There were signs of a struggle." The room started spinning. "Are you saying—" "We're saying your sister is missing, and your husband is our primary suspect. The next weeks were a nightmare within a nightmare. Police searching for Teresa. Questions about David. My face plastered all over the news as the abused wife whose husband might have murdered her sister. The whole city talked about nothing else. The scandal. The affair. The disappearance. I became a prisoner in Maria's house, afraid to go outside, afraid of the whispers, the stares, the judgment. Some people blamed me. If she'd been a better wife, he wouldn't have strayed. Others blamed Teresa. She got what she deserved for sleeping with her sister's husband. Nobody seemed to remember that David was the villain here, that he'd manipulated both of us. 2 months after Teresa disappeared, they found her body in a shallow grave outside of Laredo. She'd been beaten to death, then dumped like garbage. The medical examiner said she'd been dead since the night she disappeared. The same night I'd caught them together. Police theory. David and Teresa had planned to run away together. They'd argued, probably about me or money. He'd killed her in rage, disposed of the body, then fled to Mexico where he had family connections. They never found David. He vanished completely, probably living under a fake name somewhere in Central America. I should have hated Teresa. She betrayed me in the worst way, but all I could feel was crushing guilt. If I'd left David earlier, would she still be alive? If I'd warned her about his violence, would she have stayed away? If I'd been a better sister, a better wife, a better person, would any of this have happened? The guilt nearly destroyed me. I lost my job at the hospital. The scandal was too much. Parents didn't want the nurse whose husband murdered her sister caring for their children. I lost my home. Couldn't afford the mortgage on my own, and the house was a crime scene anyway, forever tainted. I lost my standing in the community. Became that woman everyone whispered about. Most painful of all, I lost my relationship with my parents. They couldn't look at me without seeing the daughter who'd brought this tragedy into our family. The daughter whose marriage had killed their youngest child. I spent months in deep depression. Stayed in Maria's spare room, barely ate, couldn't sleep. Nightmares plagued me. Teresa's face. David's fists. Blood everywhere. You need to leave San Antonio, Maria finally said one morning. Start over somewhere nobody knows your story. Where would I go? Anywhere. The world is big, Rose. It was Juan who brought me the bus tickets. Portland, Oregon. My cousin lives there. He says it's beautiful. Rainy but beautiful. Nobody knows you there. You can be anyone you want. I don't know who I want to be anymore. That's why you need to go. Figure it out somewhere new. On September 15, 1977, at 24 years old, I left San Antonio with one suitcase and a broken heart. The bus ride to Portland took 3 days. 3 days of watching America roll past the window, desert to plains to mountains to forests, each mile taking me further from my old life. When I finally arrived in Portland, stepping off that Greyhound bus into the rain, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Nobody here knew my name. Nobody knew my story. I could be anyone. I stayed with Juan's cousin Miguel and his wife Elena for the first month. They were kind people who asked no questions, just provided shelter while I figured out my next move. Portland was so different from San Antonio. Green instead of brown. Cool instead of hot. Quiet instead of loud. The rain fell constantly, washing everything clean, including me. I found work as a waitress at a diner downtown. The pay was terrible, but tips were decent. I rented a tiny studio apartment in Southeast Portland. One room with a bathroom and a hot plate. But it was mine. A space where nobody could hurt me. For 2 years, I lived like a ghost. Worked, came home, slept, repeated, spoke to no one beyond what was necessary. Built walls so thick around my heart nothing could get in. It was a regular customer at the diner who finally broke through those walls. Margaret was a retired librarian in her 60s, sharp-witted and warm-hearted. She came in every Tuesday and Thursday for coffee and pie, always sat at the counter, always left generous tips. One day she asked, "You always look so sad, honey. What's weighing on you?" I'd perfected my fake smile by then. Just tired from work. Honey, I wasn't born yesterday. That's not tired. That's grief. Something about her directness, her genuine concern, cracked my armor. Before I knew it, I was crying into a dish towel behind the counter, telling her everything. Margaret listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the counter and held my hand. "You survived," she said simply. "That makes you stronger than you know." I don't feel strong. I feel broken. Broken things can be mended. Sometimes they're even more beautiful for having been broken. Margaret became my friend, my mentor, my lifeline. She introduced me to the Portland Public Library where she'd worked for 30 years. Showed me books could be an escape from my thoughts. "Come volunteer," she suggested. "Help me with the children's reading program." I hesitated. I'd avoided children since losing my babies, since losing my nursing job. Too painful, but Margaret was persistent. Those kids need people who understand pain, who can show them life goes on. So I started volunteering on Saturday mornings, reading to children, helping them pick books, watching their faces light up when a story captured their imagination. Slowly, I began to heal. In 1980, Margaret convinced me to go back to school. "You're a nurse, Rose. Use that training. Portland needs good nurses." I can't. My license is in Texas, and there's the scandal. Oregon is a long way from Texas. Apply for reciprocity. The worst they can say is no. The worst they could say was no, but they said yes. By 1981, I was working at Providence Portland Medical Center. Back in scrubs, back helping people, back to feeling useful. It was at the hospital that I met Thomas. He was a social worker, tall and quiet with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Nothing like David. Where David was loud and commanding, Thomas was gentle and thoughtful. We worked together on difficult cases. Teen mothers, abuse victims, families in crisis. Thomas had a way of making people feel heard, valued, safe. One day, after a particularly hard case, a young woman who'd been beaten by her boyfriend, Thomas asked if I wanted to get coffee. Just coffee, he said quickly when he saw my hesitation. No pressure. I just think you could use someone to talk to. That first coffee lasted 3 hours. I told him about my past, expecting him to run. Instead, he listened, then shared his own story. His first wife had died of cancer when he was 25. He'd spent years in grief before learning to live again. Tragedy doesn't define us, he said. How we respond to it does. Thomas and I became friends. Then more than friends. But it was slow, careful, built on trust rather than passion. In 1983, we got married in a simple ceremony at a park overlooking the Willamette River. No big wedding. Just us, Margaret, and a few friends. Are you sure about me? I asked the night before. With all my baggage? Rose, we all have baggage. Yours just happens to be heavier than most. But I'm strong enough to help you carry it. Thomas kept his word. When nightmares woke me, he held me until I calmed. When anniversaries of Teresa's death came around, he took the day off to sit with me. When my parents finally reached out wanting to reconcile, he drove me to San Antonio for the reunion. In 1985, at 32, I got pregnant. The fear was paralyzing. Would I miscarry again? Would history repeat? But this time was different. This time I had Thomas supporting me, encouraging me, believing in me. In December 1985, Daniel was born. Healthy, perfect, crying loudly. When they placed him in my arms, I felt something I'd thought died years ago. Joy, you're a mother, Thomas whispered, tears streaming down his face. I'm a mother, I repeated, amazed. 2 years later, we had another son, Michael. Our family was complete. Raising my boys healed parts of me I didn't know were broken. Watching them grow, teaching them about respect and kindness, showing them what healthy love looked like. It gave my suffering meaning. In 1990, I became a nursing supervisor. In 1995, a director of nursing. My career flourished as I finally stopped hiding from my past and used it to fuel my work. I started a support group at the hospital for domestic violence survivors, creating a space where women could share their stories, find resources, heal together. In 2000, I received the Oregon Nurse of the Year award. Standing on that stage, accepting that recognition, I thought about the girl who'd left Texas in shame. How far she'd come. How much she'd overcome. My parents reconciled with me fully by then. My father's final words before he died in 2003 were, "I'm proud of you, mija. You turned pain into purpose." Maria and I remained close. She visited Portland every year, brought her kids, then her grandkids. We'd sit on my porch drinking coffee and remembering Teresa not as the woman who betrayed me, but as the little girl we'd both loved. In 2010, I retired from nursing. Thomas retired the same year. We traveled, saw the Grand Canyon, visited Mexico, cruised to Alaska. In 2015, we became grandparents when Daniel had twin girls. Then Michael had a son. Our house filled with the laughter of grandchildren, the chaos of family gatherings, the love I'd once thought I'd never experience. Thomas died 2 years ago. Peaceful, at home, holding my hand. We'd had 39 years together. 39 years of healing, of building, of loving. I miss him every day, but I'm not broken anymore. At 71, I look back on my life and see not just tragedy, but triumph. Not just loss, but gain. Not just survival, but thriving. David never faced justice. He's probably dead now, or living somewhere under a false name. Teresa never got to see the woman I became. never got to be an aunt to my boys, never got to make her own redemption story. But I did. I turned my pain into purpose, my trauma into testimony, my nightmare into a story of hope. If you're watching this and you're in a bad situation, please know there is life after abuse. There is happiness after heartbreak. There is light after the darkest night. You are not your worst moment. You are not what was done to you. You are what you choose to become despite it all. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me where you're from, and if you're comfortable, a piece of your story. We heal through sharing. We overcome through community. We survive through hope. From a broken girl in Texas to a whole woman in Oregon, this is my story. This is my testimony. This is proof that no matter how dark the night, dawn always comes. With love from Grandma Rose, survivor, nurse, mother, grandmother, and witness that healing is always possible. A kiss to each of your hearts, and see you in the next story.